Hey everybody, it's Yvonne from Western Straw Art and Wear. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We had a pretty good one. We got some rain and worked in the kitchen, putting up some juice, and then Lyle worked on our back patio that we're hoping to get finished soon. Anyway, I believe I'm getting ready to read chapter 14 from my dad's book, Up from the Dust, and let's see how it goes. One day in spring, Calvin Warren came and found us at the Red House. Him and Pa had some words, and he told Pa, "You made a bargain with me, Tom, and now you're breaking it. It really put me in a bind, I can tell you." "Well, I know I did, but I ain't coming back. I don't care what you say. I can get all the animals back, and you could still have time for a plant bed and go right on like nothing ever happened." "Well," Ma says, "that sounds pretty good to me, Tom." "Well, it might sound good, but I aim to stay here and hire these kids out and make me some money. It's the only time in a while I've had some money in my pocket. I guess I can't get anything through that head, so I'll go on back and see if I can get something else. You know this will give you a bad name in this country, don't you?" "I don't care what it gives me. I ain't going back." "I don't see how you and your family could stay in this little old shack, but if that's the way you want it, go to it." And he got into his gitney and he left. Ma and Pa had a hell of a row when he left, but that wasn't anything new. I had my Barlow sharp. I had strapped it on Pa's razor strap, and it would cut the hair off your arm. In spring, it was a nice day, and the frogs was a-croaking in the stream and the ponds. The birds was hustling around and singing and getting ready to build their nest. I just felt pretty good, considering the conditions and all. I had me a book sack that Ma had made out of an old pair of worn-out overalls. I was going to school when old Chaw and his crowd stopped me and Sue. Thaddeus won't with us that day, and I guess that Chaw figured he would beat the hell out of us, sort of to whetten his appetite. I put my hand in my pocket, and while they were making fun of me and calling me one thing and another, I had gotten my knife open and was a-holding it under my book sack. "I think this boy needs some more training," Chaw says to his gang, and they all laughed. Chaw came at me, and when he did, I came out with the knife and cut his arm all the way from the elbow to the wrist and laid it open. I made another pass at his stomach and cut his shirt open and come out with a piece of meat on it. I jumped back and waited for some of the rest of them to come and overpower me, which is what I thought they would do. When the blood come a-pouring out of the cut and a-splattering down on his breeches, he turned white and headed for the school, and the teacher with his gang right behind him. Sue says to me, "I think you might have played hell with him, 'cause he sure was laid open." We went on to school, and the teacher and some of the kids came out to meet us. They had already sent old Chaw to the doctor at the mill. Miss Yancey took my knife from me and said she was going to take me to the principal in the city school. But first she wanted to know why I did such a thing. "Well, ma'am, I've had a bunch of them beating up me and my sister for the past 6 months and poking fun and doing anything they could to make us unhappy. I got all that I was going to take, and now they know how I feel." "Would you do it again?" she said. "Yes, ma'am, I sure would," I lowed. "Well, I'll just have to take you to the principal, and he'll probably whip you with his strap. Although you're only 7, you've done a bad thing, and I'm sure the kid did provoke you, but that won't save you. I'm going to keep this nice, and you can have it back." And you can't have it back, she said. Mrs. White-Eye was my teacher, but Mrs. Yancey was in charge of the school. Miss White-Eye had a Star Durant one-seater that she drove to school, and they took me that afternoon to the principal, Mr. Starvey. He was a feller that wore suits and had heavy-smelling aftershave lotion like they have in the barber shop in town. I figured he weren't going to like a little old boy like me, a-smelling like all the things I stayed around and with little or no washing. As they ushered me into the room, Miss Yancey said hello to Mr. Starvey. I could tell she had a nervous little laugh that sounded like runt. She told him about what I had done, and he told them to wait outside. "Now, boy," he looked at me down at his nose like I was something that he had rather not be around. "Tell me what happened out there. Not that anything on Cotton Hill that happens don't surprise me." I told him my story, and he listened. Then he said that I was probably in the right, but he had to punish me. "I'm not going to expel you because no one would care anyway, and maybe if I let you go to school it might learn you something. So I'm going to give you 15 lashes. I understand that's about how many stitches that boy had to have." He went and got his strap and bent me over the chair. He commenced to give me out the punishment. Crack, crack, crack. and on it went. It hurt so bad that I lost count. I lost sense of reason, and all I could do was hate the feller whipping me for protecting me and my sister, and all the rest that had anything to do with the system. When it was all over, he said to me, "Would you cut this boy again if he did what he did to you?" And I said I would. I'd also kill him if I could the next time. That's what I figured. So it's no use bothering to beat you anymore. It won't help a kid like you. It doesn't matter what I do. You go back to your teacher, and here's a paper to give her that will tell her that you have been punished. He opened the door and let me out. Mrs. White-Eyed and Mrs. Yancey were waiting for me on the outside. They took me home and put me off in front of my house. I didn't tell them goodbye or anything. I just walked away. Ma asked me what happened, and I told her the story. Sue had already told her about me and Chaw. "Well, when you get out of the traces, someone will sure whip you back in," she says. That's all I got to say. Pa didn't care either way. He was more interested in the money he was getting from the kids in the mill, not in me. I was sore for a couple of weeks. I didn't have any more trouble with the gang, though. They gave me a wide berth. When Chaw came back to school, he had his arm in a sling. He came up to me and said, "I hear you let that feller uptown beat the blood out of you and didn't cry." I didn't cry out loud. I was crying inside, I lowed. "You stung me good. I'm going to nickname you Skeeter, 'cause you sure burnt me with your bill. If you want to be in my gang, you have a place any time you want. I don't want to be in your gang. I just want you and the rest of the boys to let me alone, and I won't bother them. Any of you bother me, and I'll cut your throat." And I walked away from him after that. As spring led into summer, I began to get the hang of the city living. None of the boys bothered me, and I didn't have my Barlow anymore, but they didn't know that, so they stayed clear of me. A couple of girls began to play with me. They would hug and kiss on me and walk around at recess with their arms around me. Mary Sue Walker and Ophi Bryant. Mary was sort of thin one and had the beginnings of boobs, but Ophi was plump and had some big ones. I used to walk to their home at recess and get something to eat, like biscuits or whatever, in the kitchen. Sometimes we would stop at the outhouse and kiss or go to the bathroom or whatever. We would have to then hurry back to the school because the bell was a-ringing. The next few days I tried to get back in the groove with the girls, but they weren't too close until later. I was getting my education from women too, or about women. I made me another friend though, and we had some pretty good times. Chaw came over and took me to his home on the lunch hour and gave me a piece of hoe cake and butter and 'lasses. We would meet up after school and go fishing in the mill pond and was friends until school was out, and he went to the city school in the fall. Mary Sue asked me several times if I told Chaw about us kissing, and I said no. She said, "I love you for that, 'cause you can't let them big boys do that or they'll get possessive, and I sure don't want that." Then she hugged and kissed me. I never did go through the stages that the other boys went through when they didn't like the girls. I always liked them. I guess that's because my ma never did hug or give a dang about me, whether I lived or died. I'm sure she cared. Anyways, I like it when the big girls were nice to me and embraced me and kissed on me. One afternoon, I went up to the barn to say hello to old Charlie, and I saw a mess. It had rained, and his stall was full of water, and he was about up to his knees in manure and water. He slouched over to me and nickered, and he rubbed his nose on my hand. I rubbed him a spell and went and told Ma about him. She woke up Albert and told him to go see to the horse. He woke up sweetening, and we went to the barn and took a shovel and let out the water from his stall and took Charlie and dried off his feet. We put hay in the stall and got it in a pretty good shape. "We've got to do something about this horse," Sweetening says. "He don't ever get any exercise, and no one ever talks to him, and there's no other horses around. I'll have to talk to Pa and see if we can't get something for him." So the next week, Mr. Andy Clayton took him and gave him to a farmer over in South Boston or thereabouts. We all said goodbye to him and felt that he was the last connection to the farm that we had known. Later we heard that they treated him nice and that he was out in the pasture to run around on the weekends. We all felt good about that. He had been a good old horse, and we wanted only the best for him. Grandpa came back to town and stayed with Aunt Mattie and Uncle Ed over on Cotton Hill. He still didn't have his horse or his buggy or old Nick. The lap robe was gone also. He come over to the house to see us, but he didn't stay long because he didn't have any room for him to stay. We didn't have any room for him to stay. He looked pretty bad and he had a cough, but he was dressed pretty good. That week, school was out and all of us was glad. I passed on to the second grade, so I guess I learned something after all. All of us kids said goodbye to the teachers and the other kids. Opie and Mary Sue came over to me and gave me a big hug and said they would see me in the fall. I walked home with Sue, Thaddeus, and his sister. We promised to go fishing soon in the mill pond. Things were about the same at the home place, only Charlie was gone. Right and me built us a house out of weeds and straw and hid it in the tall weeds and the grass. We used to stay out there most of the time after school was out. Then when everything was going pretty good, a feller by the name of Fuller Brown come to visit us and told us that he lived just up the road a piece and he wanted to play with us in the house. I didn't like him, but Wright said all right and to let him stay for a spell. He had a pocket full of cigarette butts, and he was cutting them off in our house, and it made me mad. Then he would start to smoke them, and that would tip off the older ones of the house. I pulled Wright over to the side and told him how I felt. He's pretty big, Wright said, and I don't know just how to get rid of him. Well, I got an idea. I'll just yell as loud as I can and say that Fuller hurt me. Ma will come out and kick him off the place. It's worth a try, he says. So I get out of the house and holler, fit to be tied. Oh, no, my arm. You're breaking my arm. Quit, don't. Well, sir, Ma comes a-biling out of the house wide open with her apron tucked up. What's going on out here, she hollers. That Fuller, he's a-hurting me, and I want him to go home and leave me be, I cried. Young'un, you get out of here right now before I take a frail and wear you to a frazzle, Ma says. Old Fuller didn't expect nothing like this, and he took off up the street. You wouldn't have had any of this on the farm. No, sir, there ain't no place to raise a family. All this a hell-raising and Tom wanting to get more money working them kids in that mess of a cotton mill instead of the fresh air in the country that they was used to. Having to get rid of old Charlie, the last of the things that I liked in this world. Been cooped up in this little old house that you don't have room to cuss a cat. Not that I take to cussing, but the devil sure does take a holt of a feller once in a while. Why, I got a minute the other day to read the message, and I came across this piece talking about taking up your bed and walking. Why, this feller, I don't remember his name, he was afflicted and he was a-sleeping on the roof or something. And the Lord told him to pick up his bed and walk. Yes, sir, Lord, I hear you a-calling me to take up my bed and walk. That's just what I want, to take up my bed and get out of here. I tell you all that when he calls, I must follow. Lord, have thine own way on this bunch of lost chillins. I want you young'uns to stand up here with me, and we're going to sing that song, When He Leads Me, I Will Follow. We stood up and Ma commenced to sing, Where he leads me, I will follow. Where he leads me, I will follow. I will go with him all the way. And on it went with Ma and a leading and the song. On it went with Ma a leading the song and Wright and me a coming in the rear. When the song was over and Ma leaned back and said, Lord of mercy, shine down on me in this hellhole and bring me out into the land of milk and honey. Shed me of this batch of money-grubbing sinners and let me walk in thine light that you've chosen for me to walk in. Hallelujah, praise the Lord in all his glories, and let your light shine on me. Ma looked up at the sky and commenced to doing the black bottom and a ball in the jack. She did this for a spell, and Wright and me just looked on. There wa'n't much else to do when Ma started in on her preaching. That's all anyone could do around Ma was shut up and listen. That summer we moved into a different house. It had more rooms at least. We all liked it better, and Pa was ready to beat the feller out of his rent for a month or two. Mr. Hall was the owner of the house that we lived in, and he didn't have anything to do with the other guy that we moved into his house. Mr. Hall was a fine feller, and he cured up my sore on my lip, and for that I liked him. He had a boy at Duke studying to be a lawyer, whatever they were. Anyways, I was a ways up the road. It was a ways up the road from us, from where we had been. He had been poor lately and had been off of his feet. He told Pa and Ma that he had a big house up on the railroad that he would save for us when it came empty. And that was the end of the chapter. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. And God bless everyone. Let's see if I can find my pin here. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.